starting up tonight. We've been looking, of course, at Abraham, Genesis. After you get past the creation story, past the flood, you get into what's known as the patriarchs: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. And so tonight we start off with the death of Abraham, Father Abraham. So 25:1 says, Abraham took another wife whose name was Keturah. She bore him 6 kids. And anybody wants to pronounce them, go right ahead. Let's see. I guess it would be the second oldest, Jokshang, something like it. J. Became the father of Sheba and Dedan, and he had sons. And then you go down to verse 4, and the son of Midian, which I'm assuming is, no, there he is, Midian, another one of his sons by her. All these were listed, and these are sons of Keturah. And verse 5, Abraham gave all that he had to Isaac, to the sons of his concubine. Abraham gave gifts while he was still living and sent him away from his son Isaac eastward to the land of the east. Now, you can see, if you go back into First Chronicles 1:32 and verses following, Keturah, I guess that's how it's said, is mentioned. And as you will see in the Old Testament, think of Solomon. Now, not that many wives, but Solomon had so many wives and what they call concubines, girlfriends on the side that were the wives knew about. That's what they believe Keturah was to Abraham. Probably somewhere while Sarah was still alive, he took her. So that's what the scholars say. So verse 7, these are the years of Abraham's life, that he lived 175 years old. That's pretty good, isn't it? That's what Paul and I say. Mama's going to outlive us. She's going to be 175. Abraham, verse 8, breathed his last and died in a ripe old age, an old man, satisfied with life, and he was gathered to his people. And then notice who buries him. His sons, Isaac and Ishmael. None of the others that we just read are mentioned. They buried him in the cave at Machpelah, in the field where he bought from the Hittites there in Mamre, where he had buried Sarah, his wife. And it came about after the death of Abraham that God blessed his son Isaac. Isaac lived in Beer Lahai Roi, which is the location. My notes, what I've seen, there don't know exactly where it was, but it's been mentioned a few times here already in Genesis. So Abraham passes; he's lived 175 years. He was, 100, of course, when Isaac was born. So that means that Isaac is 75. But also remember, God told him, promised him at the age of 75, follow me, have children. So 100 years he walked with God. Think about all the trials that he went through, the mistakes he made. Did Abraham live the perfect life? No. Twice he goes down and says, once to Egypt, once to Abimelech, she's my sister. He ends up getting rewarded, but he lied. He didn't trust God. Of course, he did also save his nephew Lot. With a few hundred men, he took on four or five kings and their warriors. God blessed him. But you see, we can learn a lot from Abraham in that we're going to make mistakes, we're going to have blessings, but God will always be with us. So, Abraham is buried. Now, we get into verse 12, and it starts to talk about more ancestry of of Ishmael. These are the records of the generation of Ishmael, Abraham's son by Hagar, the Egyptians, Sarah's maid, bore to Abraham. And you have all the names of his sons. Now, God had promised Hagar he would have 12 sons. And again, if you feel like you can pronounce them, go right ahead. I will not stop you. Any takers? So he has his 12 sons listed there, 13, 14, and 15, and then verse 16. These are the sons of Ishmael. These are their names by their villages, by their camps, 12 princes according to their tribes. These are the years of Ishmael. He lives 137 years, and he breathed his last and died and was gathered to his people. They settled in Havilah, or something along that line, to Shur, east of Egypt. It goes to Assyria, and it's kind of, to me, I'm looking at a map, Bible map, and that's a little confusing because my footnote says that Havilah was located in central Arabia, north of modern-day Yemen. So you've got that, Mediterranean Sea. Here's Israel, and then you've got this peninsula down here, which is where Saudi Arabia is. Yemen is, I think, over here. So they're saying somewhere here. The thing is, Assyria is back this way. Egypt over here. So somewhere in this direction is where Ishmael's children took and settled. But it's the last part of verse 18, talking about Ishmael. He settled in defiance of all his relatives. What does that say about him? Somebody's in defiance of others. What does that say about them? They do their own thing. They can't get along. You say right, they say left. What does that say about the Middle East today? Does it kind of describe it? What'd you say, Jerry? Normal. There you go. Not trying to be prejudiced. I've worked with one Egyptian in the past. That described him pretty good. Now I've known others, met others that are nowhere like that. But if you think about the Middle East, and I'm not talking about just Israel and Egypt and Jordan, but Saudi Arabia and all Iraq and Iran and all that, they live in defiance. I mean, they can't even get along with one another hardly. So, tell me God's Word doesn't tell the truth and predict the future. Verse 19. Now these are the records of the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham became the father of Isaac. Isaac was 40 when he took Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, of Aram, Padam Aram, sister of Laban, the Aramean, to be his wife. So he's 40. Abraham was, anybody know? How old was Abraham if Isaac was 40? 140, because he was 100 when he was born. Unless the math was really different since then. Isaac prayed for the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was barren, and the Lord answered him, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. But the children struggled together within her. She said, "If it is so, why then am I this way?" So she went to inquire of the Lord. The Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb. 2 peoples shall be separated from your body, and one people shall be stronger than the other. The older shall serve the younger. When her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. The first one came forth red, all over like a hairy garment, and they named him Esau, meaning red. Afterward, his brother came forth with his hand holding on to Esau's heel. So his name was called Jacob, and Isaac was 60 years old when she gave birth to them. Now, Jacob, thought I had it down here, means in Hebrew, evidently, heel catcher, trickster, or supplanter. So, one who grasps the heel is what essentially Jacob means. Verse 27, when the boys grew up, Esau became a skillful hunter, man of the field, but Jacob was a peaceful man, living in tents. That describes most children. One is this way and the other is the exact opposite. Isaac loved Esau because he had a taste for game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. When Jacob had cooked stew, Esau came in from the field and was famished. Esau said to Jacob, please let me have a swallow of that red stuff, for I am famished. Therefore his name was called Edom, red. But Jacob said, first sell me your birthright. Esau, he said, well, a birthright goes to the eldest son, firstborn, and it usually means he gets a double share of the father's inheritance. So, however you want to figure that out, Isaac, of course, got everything Abraham had for the most part. Plus, he's gained in his own right. And if he was to have died right now, then Esau would have gotten twice of what Jacob was to get. So Jacob says, sell me your birthright, I'll give you a bowl of stew. So Esau said, behold, I'm about to die. So of what use then is the birthright to me? Do you think he really thought he was going to die? He might have been hungry and tired, but I don't think he was that close to death. Verse 33, Jacob said, first swear to me. So he swore to him, sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, the red stew, and he ate and he drank and he rose and he went on his way. Thus Esau despised his own birthright. You know, there's a lot of kids today that despise their parents, don't want anything from their parents. You know, I'm not talking about, they go through teenage years and they just want to rebel because everybody else is. But they really grow up hating their parents. Some have got a legitimate reason to hate their parents. Their parents are drug addicts, alcoholics, abusive. But some kids just, they're far to the left or far to the right. They don't want anything to do with mom and dad. But for the most part, your children do want something to do with their parents. So can you imagine not wanting really anything to do with what your parents have? This is how Esau was. He despised what was legally going to be his. Now we kind of get to a little interlude between Esau and Jacob and go back to Isaac. Verse 20, chapter 26. Now there was a famine in the land beside the previous famine that occurred in the days of Abraham. So Isaac went to Gerar, to Abimelech, king of the Philistines. Now, you might remember Daddy Abraham had gone to Gerar, to Abimelech, a long time beforehand. Abimelech is really a title. You go into Egypt, and their kings were called Pharaoh. Here, they're called Abimelech. So it's a different person, probably a descendant thereof, but the title is Abimelech, king of the Philistines. So verse 2, the Lord appeared to him and said, do not go down to Egypt, stay in the land which I shall tell you. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you and bless you. For you and your descendants I will give all these lands, and I will establish the oath which I swore to your father Abraham. I will multiply your descendants as the stars of the heaven, and give your descendants all these lands by which your descendants, all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because Abraham obeyed me and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my law. So Isaac lived in Gerar, land of the Philistines. Now, see what God just told him? He repeated the same promise to Isaac he's told Abraham. They told Abraham, all this is going to be yours. God says, I pinky swear, I promise. Verse 7. When the men of the place asked about Isaac's wife, Rebekah, he said, well, she's my sister. For he was afraid to say my wife, thinking the men of the place might kill me on account of Rebekah, for she was beautiful. How short of a memory do we have? God's just said, not an angel, but God said, this is all going to be yours and your descendants. She's my sister. Don't kill me. Verse 8, it came about when he had been there a long time, Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out through a window and saw, and behold, Isaac caressing his wife Rebekah. Some say they were in an embrace, kissing. Then Abimelech called Isaac and said, behold, certainly she is your wife. How then did you say she is my sister? Isaac said to him, because I said I might die on account of her. Abimelech said, what is this you've done to us? One of the people might have easily lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us. So Abimelech charged all the people, saying, he who touches this man or his wife shall surely be put to death. Now, Isaac sowed in the land and reaped in the same year 100-fold, and the Lord blessed him. How many of you like to plant a garden and reap 100-fold? Wouldn't need to plant one next year. But it shows how blessed he was by God. He's living in someone else's land, plants a field, and it just abundantly harvests. Verse 13, the man became rich and continued to grow richer until he became very wealthy. Remember, I said wealth back then wasn't how big a bank account you had. It depended upon what you owned, your flocks, your servants, even possessions such as, let's say, wheat is what he's grown, how much he has. Well, he's very wealthy. And to my knowledge, that was never said about Abraham, just that he was wealthy. But Isaac is now very wealthy. Verse 14, he had possessions of flocks and herds, great households, so that the Philistines envied him. Now all the wells which his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham his father, the Philistines stopped up by filling them with the earth. Then Abimelech said to Isaac, go away from us. You are too powerful for us. Isaac departed from there, and he camped in the valley of Gerar, and he settled there. Just went a little further east, because Gerar is getting close to the Mediterranean Sea. Then Isaac dug again the wells of water which had been dug in the days of his father Abraham, for the Philistines had stopped them up after the death of Abraham. And he gave them the same names which his father had given them. But when Isaac's servants dug in the valley and found there a well of flowing water, the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with the herdsmen of Isaac, saying, the water is ours. So he named the well Ezek, because they contended with him, meaning contention. Then they dug another well, and they quarreled over it too. So he named it Sitnah, meaning enmity, hatred. Verse 22, he moved away from there and he dug another well, and they did not quarrel over it. So he named it Rehoboth. For he said, at last the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land. Rehoboth meaning plenty of room. I've known a few churches that were named Rehoboth, but they really didn't have plenty of room. They were usually small churches. Verse 23, so he went up from there to Beersheba. The Lord appeared to him the same night and said, I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not fear, for I am with you. I will bless you and multiply your descendants for the sake of my servant Abraham. So he built an altar there and called upon the name of the Lord and pitched his tent there. And there Isaac's servant dug another well. Abimelech came to him from Gerar with his advisor, and Phicol, the commander of his army. Isaac said to them, "Why have you come to me, since you hate me and have sent me away from you?" They said, "We see plainly that the Lord has been with you." So we said, "Let there now be an oath between us, even between you and us, and let us make a covenant between you." They were afraid of him and said, "We better make a covenant before he comes and takes control of us." Really, it's smart maneuvering. Verse 29, "We want to make this covenant so that you do no harm. You will do us no harm, just as we have not touched you and have done nothing to you but good and have sent you away in peace. You are now blessed of the Lord." Then he made them a feast, and they ate and they drank. And in the morning they arose early and exchanged oaths. Then Isaac sent them away, and they departed from him in peace. Now it came about on the same day that Isaac's servants came in and told him about the well which they had dug, and said to him, "We have found water." So he called it Sheba, meaning seventh or oath. Therefore the name of the city is Beersheba. So Beersheba coming from Sheba. Esau was 40 when he married Judith, the daughter of Beri, a Hittite, and Basemath, the daughter of Elon, the Hittite. And they brought grief to Isaac and Rebekah. Why'd they bring grief? Usually you're happy when your child gets married, right? Why were they grieved? Hittites. Remember, Abraham sent his servant all the way back to his brother's place to find a descendant of that family for Isaac. And so for Esau to marry a local girl, we'll put it that way, and who do the Hittites worship? Idols. That's another reason that it would have taken and grieved them. We see a lot of idol worship today, don't we? Ways that we may not realize is idol worship. I think that's part of the problems you see in marriages. Divorce among Christians and non-Christians is still and has been around the 50% mark for a number of years. Part of the problem is either one or neither truly worship God. And if you only got one in that family that's worshiping God, and I've heard it, and usually it's the girls that say it, "Oh, I'm going to change him." And usually what happens is he changes her. Isn't it sad? We can raise up some strong Christian children, but the devil is even stronger. All right, since my mouth is drying up, we're going to stop right there and put my little mark here. And we'll stop. Any comments or anything from anybody?